Good morning, Fort Point. Stand your feet and let's worship the Lord together. Casting my cares aside. Let me hear you. I'm leaving my past behind. I'm setting my heart and mind on you, Jesus. My hands to yours, believing there's so much more, knowing that all you have in store for me is good. It is good. Today's the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today's the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I won't worry about tomorrow, trusting in what you say. Today is the day. Yeah. I'm putting my fears aside. Yeah, are you doing that today? Leaving my doubts behind. I'm giving my hopes and dreams to you, Jesus. Reaching my hands to yours, leaving there's so much more, knowing that all you have in store for me is good. Today's the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today's the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I won't worry about tomorrow, trusting in what you say. Today's the day. Today's the day. All right. Did anyone echo here? I'm going to say a part, and I need you to repeat it after me, all right? I will stand upon your truth.
I will stand upon
Not bad, Fort Point. Let's do it again. And all my days I'll live for you. I will stand upon your truth.
And I will stand upon your truth.
All my days I'll live for you. All my days I'll live. Today is the day you have made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day you have made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I won't worry about tomorrow. I'm giving you my fears and sorrow. Where you lead me, I will follow. I'm trusting in what you say. Today is the day. Today is the day. Today's the day. Today's the day. Oh, today's the day. Give a shout of praise this morning.
Good morning, Forward Point. How is everybody? Is there anybody here?
I know. Where's everybody? Come on, guys.
Hello, how are we?
All right, that's a little
bit
better.
Hi, guys. My name is Casey, and I'm joined with Sonia here. She's one of the very best friends that I have. This is Forward Point, and we are a community of faith, hope, and love. And we are in the business of helping people find their... Because we believe that you were born on... For a... And we want to be part of that process any way we can.
And
We have
good
so much
morning,
going on.
everyone. We are so excited. We've seen some new faces this morning. So if this is your first time, thank you for stepping in to a new community of faith. We know that can be scary and challenging, but we want to welcome you with open arms. We have a few things for you. If you didn't get it, we do have a small welcome bag, just a token of our appreciation for you coming in. We also have Mama Skinner's famous banana bread. Don't leave without that, I promise.
She's got leftovers. I think I might have to raid her.
Uh-huh.
I might have to steal some. She's
Oh,
got leftovers.
right,
Make
you
sure
know.
there's no leftovers, because then I'll get in
Anyways,
trouble.
We also would like you to get connected by texting WELCOME, so you can take out your cell phone to 315-883-2213, so we can send you a small token in the mail as well. There are many ways to get connected with us: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of the things. Also, while you have your phone out, you can download our Church Center app. That is where you find out about what's going on at Forward Point, our life groups, our different mission groups, all of the things. And if you need help with that, see Casey at the welcome desk after or info table, and we'll be happy to hook you up.
We have got a very exciting thing to do this morning. And I
Uh-huh.
think what we should do is you and I we have teams. You
have
take
teams.
everybody under 40.
Okay.
I'll take everybody that deserves
All right.
respect.
And I'm pretty competitive. So if you're under 40, raise your hand. All right, we've got some under 40s in the
Let
crowd.
me see all the
right.
people that are above 40. All right, we got
All right.
this. We got this.
So when the question says, Zoomer, my under 40 crowd, the best crowd, is going to answer that question.
And
When-
my boomers, the smartest of the groups, we will answer for the boomers and not when it's their turn.
All right, so let's see who is up first. All right, so this is for my group. Only answer if you're under 40. In what movie would you hear the line, "Nobody puts baby in a corner"? Do I count? Do I count? Who said it? Good job. All right, we got our first one. Let's hush. Shush. All right, what's the next one?
Boomers, what is a snap streak? I know this one, guys. Come on.
I think, wait, I think,
Did we hear it back there?
can you hear? Do you need your hearing aids?
Oh, them's fighting words, lady. That's close. Nobody? Okay. When two people send direct snaps to each other every day, the longer they do it, the longer the streak.
So we can give you a half a point for that,
Yeah,
I
because
think.
and sometimes like I've heard it referred to as streaking. I've sent them streaks.
I know that is something else, and
Yeah.
that's not appropriate.
Well, wait, you're not
for
above
this.
40, so you should have known that.
Well, we're not talking about that. All right. So, Zoomers, who was Mr. Ed? I know that one. Who was Mr. Ed? Who said that? Lee! Wait, I know it, so it counts. He was a talking horse, and I heard they gave him peanut butter to make his mouth move. I don't know.
Good to know.
I think that counts. We'll get a half a point for that. Oh, Linda. Listen, Linda.
Okay. Boomers, what famous singer-songwriter changed their genre from country to top pop in 2014? Yes, good job, Taylor Swift.
All right, we'll give it. All right, Zoomers. Ha, I know this one too. Ha, what was the party line? Anybody know? Can I answer? That counts.
Or let the boomers answer.
So the party line was when you took your old phone that was connected to a cord and called this number and you talked to a whole bunch of different people. Yes? Why was that not the party line? What was the party line then? Huh? See, there was 2 party lines, then I knew of the different party line. I don't know. That's the wrong answer. All right, anyways. No, that was it. Anyway, so that time of the year is coming up in our monthly events.
Yes, I'm very excited about this.
Yes.
And you know what? I mean, of course we have breakfasts, but life groups are launching.
Right.
And I am very excited to get back to life group. If you haven't been in a life group, please go ahead and sign up. We've got a few of them. They are in the app. Again, that app is what we need.
Yes.
But breakfast.
The breakfast is coming up. So this coming Saturday, a week from yesterday, the men are going to kick off at 9 a.m. at Love Handles with their breakfast. The women, don't be afraid. We will be having our breakfast as well, but it's not going to be this coming Saturday. It would be the following Saturday up at the Lake House. Again, there's more information and with that in the Church Center app. And getting back to life groups. If you haven't heard of it, in different places you may have heard small groups, Bible studies, things like that. But here at Forward Point, we truly believe life happens in circles, not in rows. One of the things, to share a little bit about my life group experience and some of Forward Point, if you may have not noticed, we don't really do a traditional communion here.
No, we
but
don't.
at Life Group, we break bread together every week. And that's our communion here. That's our community here. That's our time to reflect and be with each other and be part of that ceremonious kind of gathering. So
But
that's
it's not like communion. We just have dinner
we
together.
have
once
dinner
a week.
together, and that's our time of reflection and our time to just talk and get beyond these rows and really find out what's happening in each other's lives. And we gain brothers and sisters and family that you never thought you knew you needed. So
There's been many times that I'm like, oh, I can't wait till life group. I got to get to life group.
Right.
I've had one of those weeks, and it's only Tuesday.
You're not committed to one of them. If you go to one and you don't like it, there's another one for you to try out. Just do us a favor, do a one and done type of thing, and try a next one till you find where you fit. We promise it's a game changer. And I don't think
It's couches and porches and
we have a
kitchen
video.
tables. It's stories shared and moments worth remembering. It's hoping and praying and taking chances. It's jokes and laughter and shoulders to cry on. It's questions and answers and I don't knows. It's knowing you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. It's messy and imperfect. It's giving and serving and growing better together. It's life, and we weren't meant to do it alone. Life is better together. Find a life group that's right for you today.
Well, I think that just said it all, didn't it?
Said it perfectly.
Perfect.
Better than we could have.
Yeah. So I think if the kids are still here, they can go ahead and go on back. I
Yes.
see people back there waving their hands.
Mr. Glenn is ready to take you up.
Yep. Other than that,
We're going
I
to
think we're
continue with
good.
our gathering.
yeah.
Good morning, Forward Point. How's everybody doing this morning? Yes, welcome, welcome. My name is Jimmy. I'm one of the pastors here at Forward Point, and a happy Labor Day weekend to you all. I'm sure that, who's excited about this stretch of summer weather that we're about to have? I think 90s all this week. Yeah, it's going to be a great time for frozen yogurt, just saying. So make sure make sure you get out and have some dessert this week in the nice warm temperatures. August is kind of this fun month for the Doyle family. If you'd asked me 6 or 7 or even 8 months ago what August would look like, I would tell you it'd probably look a lot like the same. A lot of Jimmy being at Love Handles, working there, missing his family. But we had an awesome opportunity to bring Miss Sonia on board and kind of take over leading Love Handles over there. And in that transition, it provided me an opportunity to kind of step back for a little bit and pour into my family, because for 8-9 months I had been working full time there at Love Handles in addition to doing Forward Point stuff. And for the first time, we were able to do things as a family, and it was just an awesome experience. We had planned way back in Black Friday. We purchased some tickets to go on vacation. I had no idea how we were going to do it. We just kind of by faith bought these tickets, knowing that this was a really good deal, and if nothing else, small investment, but we're going to make it a priority somehow, some way, to go on vacation. So we were able to go on vacation. I stepped back from speaking for the whole month. We had some men here from Forward Point and part of our men's ministry who shared. We had a couple guest speakers who were able to share. And it's just been an awesome time to be able to spend together as a family and to really pour into the number one ministry that I have personally in my family. But I am excited about this transition into fall and school. Any parents say they're excited for school starting? Huh? Yeah, I'm super excited for school starting, not because I don't love my kids. I just value their education. I don't want them to, miss a beat and know their multiplication tables. So I'm super excited for education to start, and it's going to be a different season, and it's fun. So on our vacation, of course, what we do is we like to surprise our kids. We don't let them know what we're doing. We don't even let them know that we're going on vacation. Literally that morning, we just got them all in the car and left. We had packed the previous night while they were sleeping, put the bags in the van, and we hit the road, and we told them we were going to the mall. And some of the older kids, they started to catch on when we went the opposite direction from where the mall is. Instead of going 81 north, we went to 81 south, and you can look in the rearview mirror and you start to see their wheels turning. You start to see the little one just playing their games. They have no idea what's going on, but the older ones are catching on, and eventually a trip that would normally take 10 minutes to the mall, and we're in the car 30, 40 minutes, and eventually they start saying, what's going on? Why are we not there yet, right? All these questions that we have to start answering, and we're really good at keeping it a secret when we're going on trips. We surprised them on Christmas a couple years ago. Christmas Day, we went to Disney World. They had no idea. My parents came over and picked us up on Christmas Day. We blindfolded them. The next thing we know, we are letting them out of the vehicle at the airport, and we are on our way down to Florida. I pride myself on having good surprises. Each one of our kids were a surprise. We never found out which sexes they were going to be when my wife was pregnant with them, right? We would go into each one, eventually kind of got old. That's a girl. Yeah, who would have thought, right? Yeah, surprise, surprise. But we went into each one, letting it be a surprise, and I just think there's something fun about surprises. Now, as we're on vacation, as we tend to do, our family loves doing a little market research on the competition. So, of course, we had to go to the local frozen yogurt shop, right? So we were in New Jersey, and we went to the frozen yogurt shop. Maybe you've heard of it, 16 Handles. They're probably never going to come to Syracuse now because there's this new one called Love Handles that you just can't compete with. But we had to go, and we had to check out the competition. And the general consensus with the Doyle family was Love Handles is way better. So count your many blessings, Forward Point, that you guys have such an amazing ministry right down the block, and of course we always give you a Forward Point discount whenever you're there, so make sure to stop on by. Free commercial there. And then I thought I'd share with you, this is the moment when our kids realized what we were doing, that we were going on a cruise, our first ever cruise.
Going on too. Are we going on that one?
Are we going on that?
Are we going on that cruise?
I don't know. Are we?
We're going on the cruise!
Turn around and ask your dad.
Daddy, are we going on the cruise?
I think so.
What? We're going on a cruise? Oh my gosh. I could scream!
Best day of your life. I apologize. My wife is not a trained professional when it comes to videoing there. To be Litley's age, Litley just turned 5 not too long ago, and when she says, this is the best day of my life, right, in that video, she could be telling the truth, right? I mean, she's only 5 years old. It's hard to say of all the moments that she's had that this is not the best day of her life, but how fun it is to be able to create experiences like that for people, for friends, but much more so to be able to experience that with family. We had a great time. And who here has ever been on a cruise? Anyone ever been on a cruise? I know some of you guys have gone on multiple cruises, and some of you are about to go on a cruise. And it was our first one, and for the most part, everyone of the Doyles loved it. My wife never found her sea legs, so she was sick for most of it. So that was, kind of sad. She's got like patches and wristbands and medicine and all these things that she's taking at the same time that didn't seem to keep the boat from shifting from side to side for her at all. But the rest of the kids really enjoyed it. I had a good time. I'm sure I'll be able to share some things that I got to do with you over the next couple weeks. But it's just a really fun experience to go on a cruise. If you've never been on one, I encourage you, at least try it once. We just did a quick little 4-day cruise, went down to Bermuda and then back, and we made our way through the Triangle. We didn't get lost, so thankfully for you guys, we were able to come back. But it was interesting having this experience. I came back, and I absolutely loved the cruise experience. And as we mostly do after you get back connected to civilization, you go to your Facebook or your Instagram and you go through your reel and you start looking at everything that people posted. And I came across this post right after having gone on a cruise. And it said this. It said, "Following Christ is not like enjoying a pleasure cruise to heaven. We are at war on a battleship," right? Anybody ever grew up with that kind of sentiment, like being part of the church, being part of following Jesus is this like battleship mindset, right? The reality is that there's a whole lot of followers of Jesus, maybe some Christians, who take that a little too seriously, and they actually are out kind of blowing up whatever they can for the sake of what they would say is following Jesus. Now, contrast it. I grew up hearing this story about this lighthouse that was built. Somewhere in New England, there was this rescue society, and what they did was there was this cove with a lot of rocks, and ships would come in, and they would get destroyed because they had no idea. In the dark, they couldn't see what was awaiting them in this cove, and they would wind up running aground, and the ships would be destroyed. So this group in New England, this rescue society, they decided we're going to build a lighthouse. So they constructed a lighthouse that provided this, light that ships could begin to see, and the people would gather, and they would get volunteers, and they would practice different rescue attempts, because even with the lighthouse, there still would be ships that would come and run aground and become destroyed. So they would practice maneuvers, and they would get better. And as time went on, and as people became aware of the lighthouse, then there was less and less ships that were coming in and being destroyed. And as what happens is, as their skills were needed less and less, what began to happen is this lighthouse and this group of volunteers, this rescue society, they kind of began to gather, and they stopped practicing. They stopped doing their drills. They stopped doing all the things that would make them ready in case there was emergency. And this lighthouse, this rescue society, became a social club. It became just a group of people that would get together, and they enjoyed each other's company, and they knew all the same jokes, and they knew what everybody liked, and it was this social club. Until one day, there was a ship that wound up running aground, and all the people in the social club had no idea what to do because they had no longer stayed ready, had no longer been practicing in case there was an emergency. So for most of my life, I've grown up thinking, I do not want the church that I'm a part of. I don't want the church that, at one point, maybe if I would get to lead, to ever become a social club. I want to be something that is battle ready and is a lighthouse that would bring an opportunity to rescue whoever we can if the need presented itself. But in our culture, more often than not, we haven't become a social club. More often than not, what I see is we, a lot of times, have become this battleship. Now, I 100% agree that we don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but there's a spiritual battle that we are waging war against and that we're a part of. But if you were to take a poll, if you were to ask people, more often than not, they see the church as waging a war, a battle on physical things, politics and doctrines and all these different things, and we've hurt a lot of people along the way. I don't want to be a social club, but I also don't like the idea of being a battleship. And if you look all throughout church history, there's this kind of roller coaster of emotions where the church has been responsible for doing a lot of things in the name of faith, in the name of religion, the crusades and different things where we said, you know what, because we're part of this battle, it's okay to hurt people. It's okay to, because the end justifies the means. So we're going to be diving in starting today and over the course of the month of September, this idea of what does it look like to be a community? What does it look like to grow together in God's love, to recognize that a full relationship with God is not something that I can do by myself? That I can't just be an island to myself and think that, you know, I've accumulated enough information, I've got enough check-ins and gold stars from perfect attendance that, you know, I can just kind of retire now. Because church is less about the individual, but more about us as a community, what we can do together. It's more about being an organism versus being an organization. Like, it's real easy. We could get caught up in branding Forward Point and making sure that Forward Point was the coolest and the hippest, and we're, you know, doing all sorts of things that in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. But if we sacrifice our calling to be an organism for the sake of being some kind of organization that's better, the next best thing, then we're missing our call in following Jesus. Because when you think about it, I don't know about you, but I've always wondered growing up as a kid, like, why do we meet on Sunday? Right? Why do we have this time where we all get together and I got to wake up early? It's like one of my 2 days to sleep in, right? If you're a student or if you work, I don't know how adults do it. Why do we do this thing? Or sometimes people, I remember when Saturday night gatherings were a new thing. Anybody ever gone to church on a Saturday night? Oh, you heathens, how dare you? You need to repent, right? Like that was some of the things that were going on. You know, people were calling people who would go to church on any other day but Saturday. You know, not really loving Jesus or following the rules here, right? Because we get caught up in our organization more so than the organism, realizing that the day is not so much important as what we're doing. So if you've ever asked yourself maybe why, or maybe if you've never asked yourself why, then there's a good chance this morning you might find yourself in no shame, because I've been there too and many times in my life. But if you've never asked yourself, man, why do I do some of the things that I do? Why do I get together with a bunch of crazy other people 1 day a week in this theater environment? Is it something just I do culturally because everyone else does it? Is it something that I do because this is what God asked me to do? Why? Why do you do that this morning? And I remember being in Bible school and I was reading this book that I was given in one of these classes and wrestling with some of these questions. Why do we do a lot of the things we do? And one of the assigned reading books that I had was called The Purpose-Driven Church. It was by Rick Warren, who's kind of a famous pastor from out west. And as I'm reading this book, I remember him making the case about how in our culture, in American society, it's culturally not out of the norm for people to be invited to go someplace on a Sunday morning, to go to church. We have a history of people going to church on a Sunday morning. So in our culture, it's not out of the norm for you to have a friend, to develop a relationship with somebody, to then say, hey, would you like to come with me to my church? This is what it's done for me in my life. This is what I see it doing in the community. And in our culture, that is still something that is somewhat acceptable. Now, I loved it. I read that and I said, man, that's what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of creating these environments where people can just invite their friends, invite their family, invite strangers that they meet to this place where they just are going to be challenged, where they're going to be encouraged, where they're going to be loved on. Like, that's what I want to be a part of. But there's this weird thing that we have up here in the Northeast. Now, who here has always lived in the Northeast? Anybody? This has always been your home. Now, you don't have some of the, the well-being of being able to experience living in what would be considered like maybe a Bible Belt type of area of the country. I lived in Florida for a little while where I met my now wife. I lived in Indiana for a little while, man. And in these places, you can walk down the street and you can smile at somebody and they don't grunt at you back, right? Like it's not a big deal to just be passing a stranger and be like, high five, and they high five you back, and you're like, you're changing numbers and they're coming over for Christmas. It's not out of the ordinary. Now, here you try that in the Northeast, right? And they're calling 911 and they're going to accuse you of assault and battery, right? Like, smiling is a crime here in New York. That's why sometimes we do a phone check, right? And I'll have you pull out your phone and look at the camera and do the little selfie thing and say, all right, make sure you're smiling, all right? Who's smiling? Because sometimes, no, I'm not pointing any fingers, but sometimes I look out here and it's like a bunch of grump toads, okay, sitting in all these seats. A magician never reveals his secrets. But that's part of our culture. There's this term that maybe you've heard, this idea of a post-Christian nation. And it's this idea that in a lot of countries were founded on biblical principles and have this culture of following Jesus, but they've kind of grown away from that. And as a result, they're doing a lot of things that are nowhere near what it looks like to live a life following Jesus, right? A post-Christian nation. You hear about some of these nations in Europe, and there's talk about, America, the United States, becoming this post-Christian type of nation. And the reality is, I believe personally that the Northeast and probably some of the West Coast has already gone and fallen into this idea of being a post-Christian culture. So here we are living in the Northeast, and it's no coincidence that, however many years ago, 7-8 years ago, that the Doa family got connected with the Skinners after years of separation, and here we are, and I think, God, why couldn't you have called me to plant and be a part of a church in Florida or, Hawaii or, any place where I could smile at someone and not be accused of, harassment? Why? And if you're here for our series on Esther, that phrase for such a time as this, because here's the thing about living in and being in a post-Christian nation, and maybe not all of America, but for us, a post-Christian Northeast, a post-Christian culture that I believe that we find ourselves in. You can look throughout all of history, and there is this pattern of the church kind of resting on its morals, resting on its position that it's acquired in culture. And then the nation kind of begins to turn its back on its values and enters into this season of post-Christianity. But out of that, this post-Christian feeling really equals this opportunity for a pre-Jesus movement. So while I'm sad that here we are in the Northeast and everyone is grumpy and sad and miserable, I believe with all my heart that we are living in a culture that is ripe for this pre-Jesus movement. Different than anything you would have if you went to the Bible Belt where it's easy and, everybody comes to church just because that's what you do. You don't have that in the Northeast. We're in this post-Christian culture, but this post-Christian culture is ripe, is fertile soil. There's an opportunity for you and I as we begin to not rely on our position that we've always had in culture, but begin to lay down our lives for our community, that we are going to begin to till up this soil of this pre-Jesus movement. And part of that is beginning to look at our lives and ask ourselves, does my life reflect one that wants to be more like Jesus, or is it more just going through motions of things that I've always done because this is the way that it's always been done? And this morning we want to start off this idea of what does community look like by really talking about what does our gathering look like, our gathering as a body of believers look like. And if you look throughout history, we can look way back, and there's a man, his name was Justin Martyr, and he was really one of the first converts who gave his life to Jesus right after Jesus's life. He was, here about 100 years after Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection, and he became a convert to this thing called the Way, and he described what people did in this meeting. This is what he said. He said in one of his books, he says, on the day called Sunday, there is a meeting in one place of those who live in cities or the country, and the memories of the apostles or the writings of the prophets are read as long as time permits, right? That's like every pastor's dream to hear that, man. We can just do it as long as time permits, right? I'm not tired. You tired, right? Let's just keep going. Somebody bring in the snacks. We're gonna keep going. In fact, it's super funny because in the Old Testament, Paul is preaching and he's going on, and there's a story about how there's a man who falls asleep in a window, right? And he falls out the window and he dies. And Paul's like, well, we're not going to miss a beat. He goes out and he heals them, and they just get back preaching again, right? This idea of, man, they're just going to go as long as time permits. You try doing that in our culture today, right? Man, we're getting much longer than 15, 20 minutes, and it's like, I'm not coming back to this place, right? Don't worry, we're going to get you out at a reasonable time, okay? But this idea that just as long as time permits, we're going to do it. And when the reader has finished, the one presiding in a discourse, this is what he does. He urges and invites us to the imitation of these noble things. And I just love that idea that we see even in first century Christendom, this idea of someone would be up and their only hearts, their goal, their passion, their purpose is just to urge and invite, to make a case, and then to invite you to be a part of that lifestyle. Now, you compare that to a cruise ship or a battleship, what does that more reflect? Again, not denying that we're in a battle, but our battle is not against flesh and blood. That there is this cruise ship type of mentality when it comes to, man, I just want to urge and invite you with any way that I can into this lifestyle of following Jesus. And then we all stand up together and offer prayers, right? This idea of there's a response afterwards. And even here in the first century, we see this idea of that, there's all sorts of methods, different ways to do things, but there's one message. There's a verbal message that they would give of discourse and urging and inviting, but there's also this unwritten, unspoken message, this kind of verbal message of people just getting together. That there's something important about followers of Christ getting together. That in any kind of community, any kind of distance where it's possible in the country, in the city, that all of them would come together. And this is something that we see in early church history, this organism that is coming together. But we also see Jesus. Jesus kind of gives us an example. He says in Luke chapter 4, verse 16, it says, he went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, his hometown, and on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. As was something that he did every single week. He had a custom where he went into the synagogue and he heard the scriptures read, or he partook in reading of the scriptures. And I find this verse in its place in Scripture so fitting, because right before this, if you look in your Bible, what you'll see is Jesus coming out of the wilderness. Jesus has spent 40 days without any food. Jesus has spent 40 days being tempted by the real enemy, in battle with the real enemy. And out of these 40 days, probably feeling famished, probably feeling weak, the first thing that they tell us is that Jesus went to be with his community. Set the standard of coming together with other people. And what is probably the most time where, I want to be by myself. I'm going to go home. I'm going to isolate. I don't want to see anybody. Jesus set the standard to say that's exactly when you need to actually get into and be a part of the organism that is the body of Christ. The other followers, as was his custom. That's what he did. It's another example of, nowhere in Scripture does Jesus talk about, as followers of Christ, make sure that you go to church every Sunday. He doesn't say that. In all his parables about the kingdom and what it's like to follow Christ and who God is, never does he tell a story about making sure that you find yourself in a church every Sunday morning. But if you look at his life, he oriented his life around this custom to be together with followers. He's gathering together with religious leaders, with people who hold their position over the people. He doesn't probably agree with most of them, but he recognizes that I'm going to set this example, that it's important, that it's vital. If you want to be like me, if you want to be part of this community, that you're getting together, because you can't fully grow in your love for God by yourself. You can grow in your information. You can grow in your smarts. You can grow in your ability to quote verses. But you can't grow in your love for God without the other people that are here in this room. Right? It's important that he tells us to hide his word in our hearts so that we might not sin against him. But if you want to grow, if you want to become more like him, then you need to be in community. You need to make it a priority to gather together with the body. And it's not an idea that he abandoned, but that he set as an example for us. Because all too often what we find in probably synagogue settings and in religious settings is this attitude where we care more about where you're going versus who you're becoming. Where we care more about what you're doing than who you're becoming. And listen to me, 4 point. Here's the reality. 100%, okay? The church, the Big C church, all of the believers across the world, they do not need you. Okay? Anybody, there could be one follower of Jesus. One plus God is a majority, right? God has got all the supplies, all the resources. He can do whatever he wants through one person, if that's all he had. But 100%, you need the church to grow in your fullness relationship with God. That's what we need. And Forward Point is a local part of this much larger body. So we see this example in church history. We see it from the mouth of Jesus himself. But for the rest of our time this morning, I'd like to really dive into this one part in Hebrews that really dials into why it's so important for us to be gathering together. So if you have your Bibles or if you have the YouVersion app, we're going to be looking in Hebrews chapter 10, starting at verse 22. And this is what it starts off with. It says, so let's do it. This idea of getting together and being an organism, right? Let's do it. Full of belief. What is full of belief? It's this idea of being expectant. Like, I believe something's going to happen. I'm expecting something is going to happen when we get together. And I am expectant when we come to Forward Point that we're going to have fun. Can I be real with you? That's one of my expectations, is that we have fun. Now, if I asked you to close your eyes and said, all by yourself, you think about what's the one thing you expect when you come here. I don't know how many people think about fun when they're talking about going to church. And I think it stems from, what is your mindset? What's the picture that comes to mind when you think of Jesus? And for most of my life growing up, this is the picture that comes to mind, right? This is the only picture I ever saw of Jesus growing up. Stoic and, blue eyes, looking deep into somewhere else, but not me. Quiet, probably sitting up at the front. Don't speak too loud, though, because, you don't want to offend. And then I remembered I was working at my local Christian bookstore, right, a Sacred Melody, as a high school kid. And I remember one day going through some of the displays, and I saw this picture. And man, if a picture could speak 1,000 words, I had me some church up in that moment when I saw this picture. Because something inside of me resonated, right? For the first time, I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Because I know how Jesus created me, right? And then I'm kind of goofy, a dry humor. I like making people laugh. And that didn't really jive with this guy. But all of a sudden, man, yeah, I could get behind that. right? We had this idea, and even now, more culturally relevant, who recognizes this guy? This is the actor who portrays Jesus in the miniseries called The Chosen. And if you haven't seen The Chosen, I encourage you to watch it because it's amazing the church that you can have up in your own living room, watching your phone or on the TV by just experiencing a different picture of who Jesus actually could be. Because for most of us, I think part of why we are in this post-Christian, grumpy Northeast is because we've never let go of this stoic Jesus, picture of Jesus. We've never let go of, man, we're on this battleship and we're going to blow up whoever we have to make converts. And this morning we get this picture that, man, when you come together as an organism, come expectant. Come expect to have fun. Come expect, all sorts of, come expect to make a friend. Man, what if every single person who came to Ford Point every week came expecting to make a friend? Then I guarantee there probably would not be anybody sitting by themselves this morning. But no shame, no looking around, but there's some people this morning, Ford Point, who are sitting by themselves. Because there's other people who didn't come expecting to make a friend, all right? Come expecting to make a friend. Don't come expecting to find a spouse, okay? We don't need any crazy single people who are just, on the hunt for the next Mr. and Mrs. But come expecting to make a friend. Come expecting that God's going to speak to you. Man, if I can't express enough of how many times I came to a gathering of a lot of different people, and I believe the only reason I left feeling like, man, that was the most awesome thing is because I came expecting for it to be the most awesome thing. I came expecting that, God is going to speak to me. God is going to reveal to me. God is going to show me things. When you come with that kind of expectation, then all of a sudden all your faculties are looking for that. And if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. But think about it for a second. What did you come this morning expecting? And a lot of times, man, the only thing people are expecting is that give me input. Like Johnny Five, need input. Any boomers know who Johnny Five is? Yeah, come on. Come expecting that God's going to do something. Come expecting to be used. Even if you don't have a title, even if you're not on paid staff, man, that's why we kind of throw titles out the window and we say everybody can come expectant to be used. That when you give somebody a high five, when you give somebody a side hug, when you say, hey, come sit next to me, that you can be part of this story of changing somebody's life. Come expectant to be used. Come expecting something to happen that can't happen at any other point in your life. Where in your week, Ford Point, are you going to get together with 100 or so other people? There is something that can happen here that can't happen at any other point in your week. So come expecting that something amazing, that something different, something that can't happen at any other point in your week is going to happen this morning. So let's do it, full of belief, full of expectation. We're going to be confident that we're presentable both inside and outside. And it'd be really easy for us in our Christian culture to kind of think, man, this is exactly why I don't go and get around a bunch of people. Because you know what? The reality is I'm not perfect on the inside. All those other people who go, they do a really good job of making themselves look perfect on the outside. But I'm not perfect. If you look at the two, I'm not about living that fake game. I'm not about playing that part. And what the author of Hebrews is saying is not that you got to be perfect inside and outside. But he's saying, you know what? Let your lifestyle be reflective of what's going on. We are all struggling in this thing called life. I'm not going to have you do it, but if I asked, I know most of you who here has struggled with some kind of form of addiction, who has that as a part of their story, most of us would be raising our hands. because that's part of our story. There's no shame, but let's be presentable by, the same kind of thing that's going on the outside actually reflect what's going on the inside. We can drop that spirit of perfection at the door, and we're just going to be one beggar showing another beggar where we found food. That's what it means for our outside life and our inside life to become presentable, is that what's going on the inside is reflected by the lifestyle that I'm living on the outside, that I'm not putting in any energy into showing that I got it all together, because I don't, and you don't. And if you do, the next week you take over and you start doing this, okay? Because then you're probably the only one qualified. But that's not the reality. That's not the expectations of being a community and being a follower of Jesus, is that you look like you got it all together on the outside. The expectation is that you're open, and you're honest, and you're vulnerable. And we create a culture where it's okay, that we don't point fingers, that we don't cast shame as a result of poor decisions that we've all made. And in that, we are going to become presentable both on the inside and the outside. And he says then, let's keep a firm grip on the promises that keep us going, because he always keeps his word. Man, and I love this promise that we have, that when we honor him and make it a priority to come together, that we can rely on his promises, that we can work together for the good, and that he's going to work together all things for the good, not necessarily work all things out the way that we want them, but it's going to be for the good. That he is part of this process of making all things new. He promises that he's going to make all things new. Not that he's going to make new things, okay? Following Jesus doesn't just give you the beach bod, okay? He's not making new things. But he does promise to make all things new. That there's this act of redeeming that you get to be a part of, that you get to experience, and then you get to be a part of with the people around you. That he is going to make new things. It's keeping a firm grasp on his promises, that together when you see someone else who's beginning to shake or beginning to kind of waver, then as you're coming expecting to be used, you get to say, you know what? This is the truth. This is the promise. This is where in my life, man, I am struggling with that same thing. But we got to come back to the truth, and here is the promise, and that's what gets to happen when we come together. That it's not just us as American Christians and because America is a Christian nation that we're blessed. No, we're called to be a blessing. That we're blessed to be a blessing. We're not blessed just to be blessed. And I think part of this post-Christian culture that we are finding ourselves in, but also this position of fertile soil for a Jesus movement is because we've just desired the blessing. God, you bless us, bless me more blessing, just give me blessing. And it's like this dam that's just building up, and it's never meant for you just to hold it all, but for you to be a conduit to then be a blessing to the people around you. That we're going to orient our lives, we're going to orient our gathering around his promises, because he always keeps his word. And as we're gathering, he continues. He says, let's see how inventive we can be. Man, I just think this is the most amazing thing. This should be such freedom. If you came this morning and the ladies were up here and they're doing this boomer versus zoomer thing, and you're thinking like, this is a church? Right? These people are cray-cray. I mean, that part may still be true. But the reality is we have this freedom That when we gather together, like we don't have to be all polished and have it all together. In fact, he says, you know what, let's see how inventive we can be. You are no more like God than when you are creating, than when you are inventing. Man, we got guys who get together and they put these lights to do different things, and they want us to be so inventive. They said, you know, we want the lights to match the same color of whatever going on the screen. And man, these guys are such crazy cats. They start to get light bulbs in these side lights and in the ceilings, and they can make them all sorts of different colors. If for no other reason, no spiritual value whatsoever, unless you recognize that when we are as inventive as we can be, that there may not be any more spiritual state that we can be in than we're creating for the sake of the organism, the body of Christ. When we're doing different things, let's see how inventive we can be. Over the past few months, we've been as a first impressions team, a group of people who said, you know what, we want people's first time experience here at Forward Point to feel as amazing as it is when you've been coming to Forward Point for months. Because sometimes the only thing keeping people from being able to experience the kind of family that a lot of you have experienced over months of being here is the initial shock of coming that first Sunday, right? Because it's kind of awkward coming here your first time. You got to park way on this side, and you got to walk all the way to this side, and then you got to walk all the way back down this way, right? Like, it's kind of awkward. It's not your typical setup. But there's a group of people who said, you know what, we want to remove as many barriers as possible. We want to create as many bridges as possible. We're going to sacrifice. We're going to come early. We're going to, let's put a tent out here, right? And we got a tent out there, and we got a grizzly bear man in the tent out there. Green people, right? We're still working out some of the kinks, okay? But it's for no other reason than a group of people who said, you know what? We want to be as inventive as possible. We're going to do whatever we can to reach whoever we can. So let's be as inventive as we can in what? In encouraging love and in helping out. And here's the key, not avoiding worshiping together. Another translation just says, and not avoiding getting together as some are in the habit of doing. The author of Hebrews says, let's see how inventive we can be in encouraging love. Man, for most of my life, I never got that kind of culture when going to church, that these were just a bunch of people who wanted to be as inventive as they can to help us all love each other. It was more just, let's come sit in a seat and let the guy download as much information as possible. And maybe it's not about the information, Forward Point, but maybe it's how we are growing together in God's love, in encouraging love, and in helping one another out. So don't avoid worshiping together. Don't avoid getting together. Make it a priority to come and gather together. Because left to yourself, left to your own desires, left to how you feel in the morning, then this is probably the last place that you want to be. This is probably the last thing you want to subject yourself to, is this idea of possibly being vulnerable, of possibly stepping out of my comfort zone and asking somebody I've never met before, hey, what's your name? And risking that northeast grunt and growl and snarl. So he says, I recognize the tendency is probably to isolate and drift and be content with your online YouTube videos where you have access to the best communicators of the world, and that is enough. And the author says you can't encourage love, and you can't help out, and you can't worship together on your computer, on your phone. And you're going to have a tendency to stop, to avoid worshiping together, as some do, but spurring each other on. Do you guys know what a spur is? Right? Do we have any cowboys here? Probably not. This is the Northeast. Not very many cowboys. But the cowboy, right, he wears a boot, and on the back of his boot is this little round thing, metal thing, It spins around and makes a cool noise, but it's sharp. And what the cowboy does is he kind of digs that into the horse when he wants to go faster, right? That's the idea. That's the picture that he's called us to be in each other's lives. Let me tell you, some of you guys are some of the biggest spurs in my life. But that's who we're called to be. That's part of the environment we're called to create, to have these people who, maybe on purpose, maybe on accident, that they spur us. And in that spurring, there's something that happens. It propels each other. It helps me grab you and kind of fling you forward when you're not doing so well. Or it helps me kind of grab you at front and bring you back when you're kind of getting a big head, right? Like, we're called to be spurs in each other's life. And that alone should be enough in your nature to say, I ain't not going back there. But just maybe you cannot experience a relationship with God to the fullest unless you allow yourselves to be submitted to that kind of environment, what we would call community. Because here's the reality, especially as we see the big day approaching. Like, there is something that is happening. We're closer today than we were yesterday to Jesus returning. And with each day that passes, we're just getting closer and closer. And if we're not careful, all the spiritual information, all the knowledge, your desire, your nature is going to be to just shrink back and to isolate and to be like, I got this on my own because, man, I cannot stand so-and-so there. And it's okay, because I can't stand so-and-so either. But what I've said is, you know what? There is nothing that is going to keep me from gathering together with these people every week. And when I do, I'm going to come expectant that I'm going to have a fun time. I'm going to come expectant that God is going to use me. I'm going to come expectant to make a friend, that I'm going to learn somebody's name that I don't know. And I'm going to commit myself to this community. I'm going to commit myself to growing in God's love in that way. And that's why we're here. Man, Forward Point, more than nothing else, I do not want to be a social club. I want to be a lighthouse. But I also, Forward Point, I want to be a cruise, if I can be real. I want to be a cruise. Man, I experienced in 4 nights and 5 days this roller coaster of emotions when it comes to the kind of impact that somebody can have on another person. This is the guy who was in charge of cleaning all the rooms in our hallway. Man, and he greeted us, he welcomed us, he said hi to us, he made little animals with the towels in our rooms every week. But he went way above and beyond to just learn the different things that the kids liked and that the kids do. And when we were saying goodbye, he made this little, towel animal thing. But he said, you know what, don't tell anyone that I made this for you. I don't know if he makes it for all the kids, but my kids felt like the most important people in the world. And Forward Point, there's people who won't go anywhere near a church unless somehow we get out of our seats and out of these walls and start making people feel like they are the most important people in the world, because they are. And we have a leader who said, man, they are so important that I'm going to step out of heaven and I'm going to step into time and into space. And I'm going to be around a bunch of people who do nothing but spur me. And then, you know what? I'm going to allow myself to be brutalized and die on a cross, because that's how important they are to me. And that's what I want for us. This is Daniel and Al. These were our servers at our table where we had our meals. And they went and did everything they possibly could so that they learned our drinks. They learned the things that we liked. They learned the things that we didn't like. And Elle over here, man, she wore a mask the whole time. Until we said, you know what? Can we take a group picture before we leave? And Elle, she took off a mask, and I'm like, wow, that's what Elle looks like. I had no idea. Been together for a week. But there's something about this connection that we made that Elle said, it's important enough for me that I'm willing to come out of my comfort zone to maybe risk catching some kind of disease that would prevent me from working this ship and maybe providing for my family. This connection that we have, it's worth it to me for a second to come out of it for the sake of capturing this moment. And with everything that's in me, Forward Point, I pray that these are the kind of moments that we create, because there is something that can happen here when we gather together that can't happen at any other point in time, in your day, in your week, than what can happen here. And I'm glad that you get to experience it, but if you're just content with you getting to experience it and no one else, then I need you to pause for a second and ask yourself, why am I even a part of it? Why? So this morning, Forward Point, I've done my best to try to urge you this morning, like John Martyr would say. So now I would like to invite you. I'd like to invite you to being part of this community. Maybe it's not this community. Maybe we're not the right fit for you. That's fine. I want to invite you to be committed to a community, because you cannot experience the fullness of a relationship with God by yourself. Only in community with each other. So get committed to a community, committed to growing together in God's love. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to invite you lastly this morning that you would commit in whatever community that you're going to be a part of, that you would go or that you would come here expectant. That this morning as we begin to respond and we're going to sing some songs, that your prayer would be, God, to search me and to know me. Look in my heart, and where have I settled short for what you want to do in this gathering together of your believers, this organism? Have I just settled for expecting to be entertained, expecting to just have this one-way flow of information and emotion? And this morning is an invite to leave those behind and trade those for an expectation to be used, an expectation to have fun, an expectation to meet a friend, an expectation that God's going to use you, that he wants to use you. God, we are so grateful this morning that you set the example for us for what it looks like to come together. That when you and the Holy Spirit and when God the Father, he came together, you said, let's see how inventive we can be. And you got together and you said, let us make man in our image. And you went on this creative streak that just blows our mind when we look around and see all the things that we just can't help but say that there is a designer for. And you invite us to be in that same community, not just with you, but with each other. And more often than not, the very thing that you've called us to in the act of spurring each other on, we run away from. Be it a result of our trauma, be a result of any post-traumatic stress things that we've gone through, and we flee into our corners, into our rooms, and act as silos. And this morning you want to bring a freedom as we flip the script upside down and say, I'm coming to a community not for what I can get, but for what I can give. And in that, and just possibly in the flipping of that script, as I come expecting to give, that I might receive the most that I've ever received. So God, I pray that you do this work inside of us this morning. For those of us who have maybe been hurt because of things that people said in the wrong spirit or in the wrong attitude, and we have now placed that on our view of religion and church, God, that you just blow up with your grace all the pain and the hurt and the suffering, the resentment, the bitterness, so that we can come back to this place where we just start to invent, where we just start to say, we're going to redeem what it means to gather. We're going to redeem what it means to be a culture of followers of Christ. That we're going to become a cruise ship, that we're just trying to connect and build as much relationship with people as possible so that your Spirit might have the opportunity to come into their lives, and then you do the cleaning. You do the working out of their actions. And we're just going to make them feel like the most important thing in the world, because to you, that's exactly who they are. So God, would you work in us this morning? Would you allow us to make that shift in our minds and our spirits? Would you allow us to hold in such value and esteem what a Sunday morning or a Saturday night or whatever kind of gathering, whatever day, whatever time, but the opportunity where we come together will forever going forward be different, because we choose to go into it asking what we can give. We choose to go into it expectant, full of belief. So continue to work in us.
Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering all, surrendering all. Yeah. Find me here, Lord, as you draw me near, desperate for you. Desperate for you, yes, I surrender. Oh, Lord, I surrender. Drench my soul, His mercy and grace. Unfold, I hunger and thirst know you more. And I surrender, oh, I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more and more. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. Thank you, Jesus. Sing with us. I once was captive by the enemy. He had me thinking I was out of reach. Oh, Jesus, mercy shut his mouth. I once was crippled by the weight of shame. Embarrassed, I couldn't even show my face. Oh, Jesus, then I heard you speak. Your love, it comes with no conditions. You give us your whole heart. My hope is in the blood of Jesus. I know who I am because of who you are. Sing with us. I hear you. I hear you calling me beyond my sin. You tell me that grace is taking care of it. Oh, Jesus, you're my victory. Oh, Jesus, you're my victory. Your love, it comes with no conditions. You give us your heart. My hope is in the blood of Jesus. I know who I am because of who you are. I know who I am. I know who I am. Sing it again. Your love. Your love. It comes with no conditions. You give us your heart. My hope is in the blood of Jesus. I know who I am because of who you are. I know who I am. I know who I am. it with us. I serve a king. I serve a king with good intentions. God, you will never turn your back on me. How could a rich become your treasure? The love of God has changed my task. Sing it again. I serve a king with good intentions. God, you will never turn your back on me. How could a rich become your treasure? The love of God has changed my destiny. Your love, it comes with no conditions. You give us your heart. My hope is in the blood of Jesus. I know who I am because of who you are. I know who I am. I know. I know who I am. I know. I know who I am. I know. I know who I am. Sing again. Your love. Your love. It comes with no conditions. You give us your heart. My hope is in the blood of Jesus. I know who I am because of who you are. I know who I am. I know who I am. Oh, shout of praise, church.
Thank you, Stephen. You guys all sound great. Wow, wonderful. Don't they sound
Yes, it's amazing every
Yeah.
week.
good? Yeah. So, Sonia, it was a great message from Pastor Doyle. What stood out to you?
So if you know me, you know that I wear my expressions on my face. My aunt this past week says, you don't say a lot, but your body says a lot. My cousin thought different about not saying a lot, but anyways, this morning I was kind of walking around with a fog, and as we talk about community and making friends, people noticed and people asked what's wrong. And I had a couple of moments to be vulnerable, to share what I was expressing and to be prayed with, and just was able to share my concerns, and people, you know, talked me off the ledge, let me kind of just spew a little bit and addressed them, but didn't let me wallow in it. So that is why we come on a Sunday morning. I could have stayed at home and slept longer and even contemplating calling in sick to church, but then I've got to work later, so that wouldn't have worked. But this is exactly where I needed to be. So that's what I took away from this morning.
That's great. So for me, just a little quick story. When I was married, I lived in Georgia for about 4 years, and Jimmy's absolutely right about the Bible Belt and the difference in people here and there. And we had gone out to breakfast, and when I say a biker, I mean like Sons of Anarchy biker, the whole getup, you know. Walks up to our table and he goes, and I'm looking at my husband at the time like, did Austin kick his bike or something? Because we had a little toddler at the time. And then I look up at him and he says, I don't mean to interrupt. And I'm like, okay. He goes, but the Spirit of the Lord just told me to come over here and tell you guys that Jesus loves you and he wants you to come back to him. I was like, are you kidding? I couldn't believe it, you know, and at the time we weren't ready, you know. But this just reminded me today, that, you know, it's going to come from the most unexpected places. You know, and you might be that unexpected place for somebody at some point. You know, so let's just all keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, as always, we want you to stay connected, get involved. As we mentioned, life groups are going to be happening in a couple of weeks. Next week, we have a life group fair. So please plan on next week hanging around a little bit. We're going to have some treats and stuff out in the lobbies. You can meet the different life group hosts, kind of find out the information. So give us 10, 15 minutes of your time after service next week. Please don't rush out of here. What are some other ways we can jump in and get involved?
Well, of course, we've always got social media, Facebook, Twitter,
What about
online.
today right after service? How
Yeah.
can we get involved?
I'm sorry?
Today right after service, how can we get involved?
Cleaning up.
Yeah.
I was going to say also that don't forget that
Right.
that app, the Church Center
Yes.
app, because that is really, really where we got everything going on. You'll learn
Yep.
everything that we're doing. But yeah, we do need to clean up back there. So if anybody has a little time, wants to meet us back there, and we can get this place back in tip-top shape. I will be at the welcome table out there by the doors. If anybody has any questions, you're more than welcome to come up to me and ask. I will do my best to get those answers
Yes.
for you. And your kids, don't forget your kids.
Yes. Don't forget about the men's breakfast next Saturday. Come with an appetite for conversation and a great meal. Lastly, not lastly, but our prayer team is in the back corner. Don't leave here with something heavy on your heart today. They are great and wonderful. Stop back there if you need something prayed on. And we want to thank you for allowing us to do what we do in the community. Without your generous gifting, we wouldn't be able to do that. We have a drill box in the back. You can text any amount. He's strumming back there, so I think we're taking too long. So let's continue with our last song.
Have a great week, everybody.
You know, as Casey was talking, I love that biker story. You know, down south they might have some mean bikers, but we got the meanest grizzly bear man out in the back there. So say hi to Scott when you leave, and he might give you a growl if you're good. Anyway, all right, guys, we got one more going here.
Loving ducks, love.
Sing with us. God, I'm on my knees again. God, I'm on my knees again. God, I'm begging, please again. I need you. You should know the song by now. I need you. Walking down these desert roads, water for my thirsty soul. I need you. Oh, I need you. Let me hear ya. Your forgiveness. It's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. Like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Like holy water on my skin. Yeah. Dead men walking, sleepless in. I wanna know about being born again. I need you, oh God, I need you. So take me to the riverside, take me under, baptize. I need you, oh God, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. Like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Like holy water, your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. Like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Like holy water on my skin. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. Like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Like holy water, your forgiveness. It's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. Like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Like holy water on my skin. Like holy water on my skin. Oh, yeah.